All right, everyone. Thank you for joining the Clear the Box podcast. I am super excited to have one of my great friends and great coaches. I don't think he knows this, but he is one of three coaches that I ever looked at and said, I got to work harder because this guy is one of the brightest, smartest, hardest working coaches that I've ever had the pleasure of watching, witnessing. Coach Max Silberlicht, who is now the head coach of Israel Lacrosse, but his resume goes super deep. Started out as I'll say 4-year starter at 4-year starter at Hobart. Um, Went to Lynchburg after that. Then where he and I met, where we used to battle each other at Bowdoin, and I was at Colby. Then went off to BU to hang out with the big boys and explore that side of life. Then the Latvian national team, and like I said, now head of Israel Lacrosse, which I really want to get into because I really think that the organization does it really well. No shots at any other organizations, but if you feel a way, I think they do it really well. So, first, thanks for coming on, and then secondly, like, talk to me about the organization and the team.
Sure. No, I appreciate that intro, man. I got to shout out Coach Jason Archibald at Bowdoin. He was the one that instilled in me that if you're going to go to an event, you better show up when it starts and you don't leave until it's over. That's how you do your job well, and certainly have him to thank for that. As well as Steve Kadelka down in Lynchburg. He was the one that sort of took a chance on me and allowed me to learn a little bit as a young guy. I didn't know my ear hole from my elbow, but found a way to learn from him. Steve Kadelka is an unbelievable guy and unbelievable leader. And when I talk to families now that are trying to go through the recruiting process, Lynchburg is always a name that comes up because I think Steve Kadelka is, one of the best leaders of men in the country, period, end of story. So certainly have my history at Bowdoin and BU, or excuse me, at Bowdoin and Lynchburg to thank for where I am today. And even my 4 years at BU were incredible. And like you said, a different experience in the lacrosse world. So certainly have Coach Poli to thank for my 4 years there as well. But as far as Israel Lacrosse is concerned, it's a cool organization, man. It's something that it's not just national teams. It's a nonprofit organization, top to bottom, and we've got 5 pillars. Right, we want to grow the sport domestically in Israel. Okay, we want to connect members of the Jewish diaspora to Israel. Like we want to bring other people there to check it out. We want to compete and win on the international stage. That's what our national teams do. Okay, and we want to showcase Israel to the world. And lastly, we want to create programs to bridge divided communities in the Middle East. We're always doing outreach stuff that we believe is super important to grow in the game. But as far as that's concerned, before I want to talk even more about Israel, I got to thank like you said, my Latvian guys. My Latvian guys were the way that I got involved with international lacrosse. I was actually playing in the Berlin Open with a club team, and the Latvian team was there using the Berlin Open, which is to give it some context. The Berlin Open is the Lake Placid of Europe.
Gotcha.
Okay, there's we've got Lake Placid, we got Vale, we got Ocean City. Okay, probably your big three over in Europe. They've got the Prague Cup and the Berlin Open. So I'm playing in the Berlin Open. The Latvians are using it as a national team camp. They actually drove from Eastern Europe over to Berlin in a bus, and they were playing. They were preparing for. I want to say it was the 2012 European Championships, but don't quote me on that. And the head coach was actually wearing a Hobart lacrosse hat. And one of my teammates was like, "Bro, you have to go talk to this guy." And I mean, he's an imposing figure. Zintar's Kalnins. He's a 6'5", 245-pound dude. Played attack at Hobart back in the mid '70s. They called him Paul Too Tall. That was his nickname in school. So you can only imagine approaching a guy in a foreign place who's from another foreign land, who just is. He's got this imposing just figure. But we hit it off right away, and he brought me into the Latvian family once we figured out sort of the Hobart connections, and we just got talking lacrosse. And I think the international game is so unique to anything that people here in America think of lacrosse.
Yeah.
And that was the common thread for Zintars and I. We were just able to talk lacrosse, and his guys. When I met them at that Berlin Open, the guys that were competing wearing Latvia stars on their chest, they just wanted to learn. They just wanted to be sponges. They wanted to hear from somebody who knew more about the game than they did, and they just wanted to take as much of it in as possible. So from whenever I met them in 2010 or 2011, whatever it was, until the fall of 2018, I was involved with the Latvian program, and it was an unbelievable experience. All those guys, they play for all the right reasons. Okay, they compete their tails off, and they allowed me to come along for the ride. And that was 2014 World Games as an assistant, 2016 European Championships as an assistant, and 2018 World Games as the head coach. And those three international competitions with the Latvian boys were what set me up and gave me a nice platform and foundation of the international game for Israel Lacrosse to reach out and give me an opportunity to become the head coach.
I mean, that's lacrosse in a nutshell, right? Like it brings people together, right? Like uh I'm just thinking of when you're telling that story of going across seas and seeing someone with the Hobart hat. One of my former players at Colby was doing his master's abroad, and he was playing in a game. He was at LSM, and he looks across, and it was Jovan Miller he was playing against. Like, what are you doing here? And Jovan was like, what are you doing? What are you doing here? So,
So,
no, that's great. So,
yeah.
okay. So, yeah, back to.
Shout out Archers. This is Archers in Riga. This is one of the Latvian clubs. So shout out to them. I appreciate you mentioning that.
No, that's awesome. So now the Israel national team, I know about them through well, you, but Ian Kadish, who Ian played at Amherst. He was one of my club guys back in the day, one of the best people in the world. Like literally best people in the world. And then Jordan Hirsch, um, which I didn't know he was an assistant with you now. So that's kind of cool. Like you guys have some really great people with you, and what I'm noticing is, as you were saying, a lot of teams put guys together and then they just go out and play. But during COVID, there are a bunch of guys and girls who went over to Israel and stayed and did some training, did some school, got to know a little bit more, like you said, about Israel and themselves, and I think that's great instead of it just, hey, let's just get together and play at this tournament.
Totally. Yeah, we ask for a lot of commitment from anyone who's going to be involved with Israel Lacrosse, and I'm going to up that ante now that I'm in charge. It's something that I think is really important. When I was with Latvia, we truly only had 4 non-passport holders, and even those guys came over and spent time in Latvia for a summer
Yep.
to make sure that they felt the connection. Because I think the more that you commit to something, the harder it is to give up. And I think we talk about that as coaches all the time, right? As a kid, as a player, maybe he's half in, half out. It's easy for him to give up on something. But the more that he commits to something, the more that we as individuals and humans commit to something, the harder it is to give up because we know how much time and effort and just value we've put into an opportunity. So commitment to Israel is something that's really important to me and my staff. And I appreciate you mentioned Jordan. The rest of my staff is incredibly important to me. I think I'm a sort of I don't know how do I want to say this. I'm only as good as the people I surround myself with, and this was something for me as an opportunity to become the head coach, to kind of choose my staff and pull together a diverse group, because if everyone thinks the same, you're not going to get the best results, I believe. So I've got my Jordan Hirsch as the offense coordinator. Jeff Schwartz is the defensive coordinator. So those are kind of your top two dogs. What I like about having them on staff is they've been involved with Israel Lacrosse before. So I'm new, but they've been involved.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Jeff Schwartz was actually the head coach of the European team in 2016 that came in second. They won silver. Jordan Hirsch was his assistant, and they were both on staff in 2018 for the World Games under Bill Barroso, who was the head coach. And then beyond them, I've actually got a high school buddy of mine, Brett Evans. He's the head coach at Boca Ciega High School down in St. Pete, Florida now.
Okay.
He was a high school teammate of mine, went on and played a few years at RPI. But again, just a different perspective on things. He was actually he was on my staff with Latvia in 2018 as well. He's a guy that just I know he'll tell it to me straight. I know he'll bring a ton of value and a ton of energy. He cares about the guys, and he's just a lacrosse. He's a lacrosse rat. He loves it. So
No.
then the last guy we have is Francis Donald, Tex.
Oh, my man.
Yeah, yeah. So Tex is going to be on staff with us. He's obviously an incredible lacrosse mind, and again, you talk just bringing different ideas together, and he's got one of the best minds in the game, and he thinks through things in a really unique way.
Yes.
I love the way that he sees the world. I love the way that he sees the game. So having somebody like that I look up to, certainly, because he took me under his wing as a young coach.
He sees people. Like, he
Totally,
gets people
totally,
even bigger than the game. He
totally.
gets people.
Totally. So having him on staff is going to be great. So it'll be the five of us plus Andrew Landsman is our director of operations. He's got an unbelievable background in ops, and we're excited to have him and keep our boat going in the right direction and staying sharp and attention to detail. So that'll be the crew that we're attacking this thing with, and all of them have made some type of commitment to Israel in the past. We had everybody came to we had an evaluation session over. Memorial Day weekend, and every single one of those guys was there, and they gave up their holiday weekend to come be a part of Israel Lacrosse, which was cool. You know, Jeff and Jordan have obviously spent time in Israel. My buddy Brett, he spent time in Israel for the 18 games. I know he's ready to go again whenever I ask. Francis has got some Hebrew tattooed because him and Jordan are basically
They're
mishpacha.
brothers. Yeah.
Family. Yeah, yeah, yeah. He's all in, and Landsman played for Israel Lacrosse back a few years ago, and is actually a dual citizen. Andrew is. So it's those connections I think are key because again, like I said, it means more to somebody who has those connections and has made sacrifices to make those connections.
Yeah. And speaking of that, like, great staff, great players, right? If you look of who, I don't want to say you guys have trials, but you do have tryouts, and you're grooming guys for this. You guys are looking at making a run at being is not just U.S. and Canada. You guys are right looking at making a run at this in the future.
Yeah, the goal, the next step. I was actually speaking with a player who was on the 2018 team in the Worlds. They came in seventh. I was talking to him, and he was saying how, yeah, the goal is obviously to win a medal, but there's got to be steps to it, right? And I think the next step for us as a program on the international stage is to become a group that we make the blue group. We earn our way into the blue group, top six. You know, that's something that Israel came in seventh in 2014 as well as 2018. And Coach Baroza and the rest of the people on staff did a great job of getting them there. And now I'm tasked with, up in the ante. And that next step is getting into the blue group.
Awesome. So I want to go back a little bit. You talked about Coach Arch. And for those who don't know, and I'm saying this in the most nicest way with respect, he is intense.
Yes, sir.
In a good way. I'm not trying to I remember top 150 playing basketball with him at 12 at night in this hot, sweaty gym at Portsmouth Abbey. And I'm having fun, just rebounding, passing, having fun playing. And Coach Arch looks at me with the seriousness and he goes, "Do you not want to play to win? Then get the damn rebounds."
Yep.
And I was like, "Oh, we playing." Like that kind of intensity I remembered. And then we played until about 2 a.m. and he came back out at lunchtime with his sneakers and was like, "Rashad, we're playing again." And we played again.
Coach Arch's competitive nature is something that makes him unique, and it also makes him super successful. His attention to detail, his willingness to sacrifice everything anything it takes to win, he'll do. And that was good for me because I'll be honest with you, man, as a goalie growing up, I had to find ways to be more even keel. If I was that competitive in the net, I don't think mentally it puts goalies in a really good place. So I I saw that, I felt it, but it was great for my growth because it allowed me to see a different mindset, and to see a different mindset be successful. I'll tell you what, another guy who's cut from the same cloth, play to win, Chris Brzezinski, first assistant that I ever coached with at Lynchburg College. He plays to win, man, in anything and everything that he does. I like to say that their competitive nature is like a light switch; it's either on or it's off. Whereas I think the other type of person is you got the dimmer. You can kind of turn it up. You can set the mood a little bit. You can turn it on high blast, somewhere in between. But those two are light switches, and they are two people in my life that have helped me continue to derive what my philosophy and what my theories are, and certainly adding more toughness and more commitment to winning and competitive nature to who I am is something that I certainly attest to those two because I saw it firsthand.
No, I loved it. I was like, oh, okay. I thought we were. Then it gave me like when we play against Bowdoin, I'm like, okay, I get it. Like, all right, guys, it's game time.
Totally.
This isn't joking around time. Okay,
Totally.
so
I'll tell you one thing off of that, Rashad. One thing that I've more recently it has come sort of become clearer to me. There's a winner's mentality and there's a loser's mentality, and now I think there's philosophically there's somewhere in between. But I can tell you that as two dudes, Chris and Coach Arch, they've got a winner's mentality because they play to win. There could be somebody who's out there just sort of, it is what it is. That's a little bit of a loser's mentality.
yeah,
And that's something that I think is in sports is super important. I mean, nobody liked Kobe and MJ when they were between the lines because they had freaking winners mentalities, right? And then sometimes you got to be an asshole about it. But there's something that sort of idea of being a winner versus a loser's mentality is something that continues to become clearer and clearer to me the more that I find myself in these sort of situations, and that's something that Arch and Chris have helped me identify.
Chris Saran at well now it's Jesuit Dallas Prep used to always tell me mediocrity is contagious. That was his thing, and that stuck with me. Like
Totally.
it's a choice to be mediocre, and I get what he's saying. I don't want people to take it out of context now, but you get what he's saying on the athletics field. Like you have a choice: do it the right way or not.
Totally.
So, all right, I want to get some bring you back a little bit because we were discussing this a little bit, and it really, really hit home to me where you were talking about, choosing yourself and taking some time for yourself. Um, a lot of people don't know, and I've been talking about recruiting a lot and helping kids get to different colleges, but a lot of kids don't know the toll that summer recruiting takes on a coach. Um, Take us through what summer recruiting would be for you. And I'm laughing because you guys usually make it to the playoffs or deep into the NESCAC tournament or playoffs. So you're going pretty far. And then the next day, what's your
Sure.
summer like?
Sure. So I guess to sort of back it up even further, I stepped away. So I was in the college game, like you mentioned, at Lynchburg, Bowdoin, and Boston University. I did that for 11 years. I stepped away after the spring of 2011, or excuse me, 2021. Stepped away from Boston University, and what do you know? Next year they win a Patriot League championship. So I just had to get out the way and let them succeed. So I was stoked for those guys for sure. But yeah, so over the last two summers, the summer of 21 and this summer, they have been unique for me as a professional. I haven't been on the what we'll call the summer circuit. I haven't been trying to get to Platinum Cup put on by Adrenaline, then travel up to gosh knows Baltimore summer kickoff, to then come down to an NLF event, to then shoot home for a change of clothes, to then hit the Under Armour tryouts and all this kind of jazz. So I
Trying to
will
get on the
say,
island.
yeah, exactly. Hang out at Mitchell Fields on July 4th and hit Jones Beach for some fireworks. Yeah, there was some sacrifice. Talk about sacrifice. There's sacrifice there made by some of us, by all the college coaches. to be there and do what we think is best for our programs and recruiting these kids, these young men and their families. So, as far as the summer circuit's concerned, man, it's something that I think it I think as a young coach, again, I learned from Coach Arch what's the right way to do it, and it's get out there and see as much as possible so you can be as informed and as prepared as possible. And for me, what that meant was being at any and every event that I could. Most times overstretching myself, which it's neither here nor there. It is what it is, and I thought it allowed me to come back to the head coach and come back to the program and have a list of guys that I thought could be the best for our program. Whether it was a top 15 guy because of the way that he carried himself, because everyone can see the talent on the field. But could I find guys that, were not, maybe they didn't jump off the page and our boy Ty Zanders isn't tweeting about them, but they were doing a lot of things right. And they were playing the game the right way, and they were supportive teammates, and they were carrying their own bag off the field. They weren't asking mom and dad to carry their bag, and mom and dad weren't running over to the bench with a bottle of water for them because they took ownership of their own athleticism and their own sort of day when they were there between the lines. So my summer was spent, all up and down the East Coast, sometimes pop over the West Coast in the summer and watch as many kids as play as I could so that I could create a group of young men to come in and play for whatever program I was playing at that were the right fit, not only the right talent, but the right fit. And I will say these last couple summers, it's been nice to not have to be on the road and watching lacrosse from 8 a.m. till 4 p.m. every single day of the week. I still work with some younger players here in the Boston area and do some training and things like that. And hearing their schedules, I'm like, man, mom and dad, I do not envy you, because they're doing the exact same stuff we were doing as college coaches, maybe to just a tiny lesser degree, but not by much. And there's actually an end in sight because they do it for 3, 4, 5 summers, whatever it is, and then their kid moves on. So, yeah, man, it's these last couple summers certainly prioritizing myself and my relationships with friends and family has been a ton of fun. I'm blessed to still have be able to pay rent and put food on the table, and it's I don't know, the summer circuit is certainly one that I think has, everyone's got the best intentions, but I think as a coach, looking back on it, I would have done things a little bit differently and prioritizing certain things.
Oh, talk about that. Talk about that. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, talk about
Sure.
that.
I mean, I think you hear the word burnout all the time, and I think I probably got that a little bit. I mean, there was one summer where this was actually a summer after we finally put the July 4th dead period in, which I think is the best rule the NCAA has ever
Yep.
put in. Because no joke, Nat 175 was over July 4th, and I literally spent July 4th at Mitchell Fields watching lacrosse, the RIP, the Connecticut Chargers play somebody, and then I went and watched fireworks on Jones Beach on July 4th, and I was just like me and John O'Dearna. It was great. Like, I loved it, but it wasn't exactly what July 4th should be about.
I think Mark Miller and I were driving through the city, and there was no one there because everyone's in the Hamptons.
Yeah, exactly. Now, again, I love that stuff. Like, it's great to be around people, but that's not what July 4th is about. And it's the families. The families are giving up their July 4th to watch their kid play their 19th club game that month. And it's, neither here nor there. But certainly prioritizing myself a little bit in those relationships. There's one summer where, let's say you could be on the road for 60 days from June to the end of July, take the 4 days out of the dead periods. There's 56. I was on the road. I was out of my hometown for 52 of the 54. And that was something it's just not sustainable, and
Yep.
that was something that I learned after that summer. I didn't do it again. I cut it back a bit, but I think there's a difference, because there's us coaches, we talk about quality over quantity all the time as well. So there's only so far that you can take this thing to be as prepared as possible. So these last 2 summers certainly prioritized myself, and it's been great to see people and be around people that I want to, and travel and all that kind of, and not be sort of not be tied to the circuit, having the ability to do what's best for me.
I remember, I think 2 summers. My parents live outside of DC, so literally I'd pack my family up. They would stay at my parents' house. I would go up and down 95, 53 days.
Yep.
53 days I was gone. And I remember this so vividly because I said I made it when this happened. Coach Tillman saw me somewhere and he goes, "Hey, make sure you go see your family. You know, you're working really hard." And I was like, if Coach Tillman says that to me, I know I'm working hard.
Totally.
And like last year and this year, like you said, I took time off and came back more refreshed and came back with different perspectives. And, even I think the best thing that happened, and I know we went back to it, was not the best thing, COVID. Please, people don't get this out of taken out of context, but when they were able to stream all those games and you could watch them from home or you could watch them online. And I remember Dan Morris and I just sitting in the office every day, just watching videos, just like stress free. It was like, that's something that needs to stay, that tournaments stream all those games, or keep giving those out to coaches. You
Now,
know,
I can't say that it was just the system that beat me down. It was certainly myself. Like I wasn't operating. I was operating under my own free will. I was making decisions to go to these things.
but it's
Whether
competition, right? Like, yo,
totally, totally,
like I would sit there and be like, "Hey, man, if Tufts and Bowdoin and Middlebury are there, I'm there, man. Like,
totally.
I got to be there. I got to beat them for this kid too, right? Like, it's I used to talk to Taylor Harris about that all the time too. Like, literally just killing ourselves for competition's sake.
Totally. Yeah, I think I don't know. I think it'll work itself out. I also think however you go about your summer or about your recruiting process speaks to kind of who you are and what your program's all about too. And everyone thinks that their way is the best, and that's great. Whatever way that you go about it is going to show on the scoreboard come springtime.
Yep.
And if you're consistently good, then your system's working and you stick with it. Or if you're a really good coach, you evaluate it year after year and you make tweaks to make it even better. But if it ain't working, you continue to do it the same way. It's like that's kind of the definition of insanity. So you got to continue as a coach, and I think you got to always be evaluating the way that you're doing things. Because if you're not, what do they say? If you're not growing, you're dying type deal. There's no middle ground.
Yep. So, question that I ask everybody: when did you find your coaching voice? I know you mentioned Coach Kadolka and Coach Arch and guys. Like, when did you find out who you were with your voice, and not try and be someone else?
Sure. Um, I guess to sort of pinpoint it would be hard, but as I look back on my career, it was probably second or third season at Bowdoin. My first 2 years at Lynchburg College, again, I was just absorbing as much as I could from Coach Kadelka because I think he's one of the best to ever do it. Um, and then my first year at Bowdoin as an offensive coordinator, again, I was a goalie, so I had to be as much of a sponge as I could be to learn offense. My 2 years at Lynchburg, and then kind of learn what pieces we had at Bowdoin to run something that was going to be successful for the players that we had. And no NESCAC fall ball, so I'm literally going off a film from the previous year, hearing about these recruits that are coming in, and God bless that incoming freshman class: Peter Reuter, Andrew Fitz, Sammy Hodge, Sean Offner, Rothman. Like those guys, they got absolutely their worlds turned upside down because as competitive as Coach Arch was, Tom McCabe, the previous coach at Bowdoin, who was there for 20 years, absolute legend, beautiful human being, he ain't Arch. So they had committed to play for Coach McCabe, which I'm sure would have been an awesome experience, just as awesome as playing for Arch, but certainly different. So God bless those guys for sticking on board. But it took me a year to sort of figure out what I thought was great for offense and what I thought Arch would think was great for offense. Because it's still, as a young assistant, I'm trying to make the head coach happy.
Yep.
There's still a chain of command here. And then year two started to feel a little bit more comfortable with the guys and with Arch and how the NESCAC worked. And then probably year three at Bowdoin is when I really felt good about what we were trying to do. And I think it was the year 3, I created sort of in my head sort of a chart for what was important. We did it at Hobart, and it was something in my playing day, and it was something. If you hit these categories, if you go 5 out of 7, you're probably going to win the game. If you go 4 out of 7 or below, you're probably not going to win the game. So it was something like that. But I created it just for the offensive side, like what was important for us offensively to do game in and game out to find success. And I think when you say your coaching voice, when I can zero in on what's important, that's what gave me confidence in my coaching voice. So it was that offensive success chart at Bowdoin that really springboarded it for me. And then when I got to BU, I spent a year as just sort of the man down coordinator and learning Poli's systems and what he thought was good. And years 2, 3, and 4, I was running the defense. And when I was blessed, Coach Poli trusted enough in me to take over the defense in the Patriot League after having been an offensive coordinator for 7 years. I had to be super confident in my coaching voice. I was about to play the big boys. There was this kid, number 2, or what was he? Number 7, or was he 2? 7? Number 7 for Loyola, who scored a lot of goals. I think he's playing basketball now.
At a
So we
high
had to find
level.
ways. Yeah, we had to find ways to defend him. The Lehigh Mountain Hawks, man, they always score goals. It was just it
Patriot
was
League's underrated. I,
yeah.
I I know this from when I was at Naps, and we would go and I listen to Coach Wellner and Coach Soul, and I'd watch those games, and you see Lehigh coming in. They're not small.
Mm-mm. No, no sir, no sir. And I mean, as you know, Army, Navy, like they can score. Sometimes they can be. They're not. I think they're probably both built on defense, or at least when I was in the league, they're both built on defense. But they still got dudes that can put the ball in the back of the net. So making sure that I was confident in my coaching voice was something I thought was going to be really important. But again, I wanted to go back to figuring out what was something we could hang our hat on as a unit. And the first year or the first summer when Coach Poli was like, "Hey Max, defense is yours. You've earned it." I spoke with some of the team leaders, and we came up with basically what we wanted our identity to be on the defensive end for Boston University. And when you say coach's voice, this is what I always go back to, because if you've got a foundation, you've got an identity, you've got values, you can always be confident in your communication to your players and to your teammates. When I got to be the defensive coordinator at BU, we created an identity, and we called ourselves Toms: tough, organized, and motor. If everybody on defense at BU played tough, if we played organized, and we played with a motor, we were going to put ourselves in a position to be successful. And that was something that, as a coaching voice, I come back to. I could always point to something on the defensive end at BU that either we were doing it as a Tom or you weren't, and it kind of personified it. And that was my coaching voice. And I'm bringing that coaching voice and that mentality of just sort of what's important, what's your identity, what are your values, to Israel Lacrosse. And Israel Lacrosse, we're going to live and die by the BASH mentality. Okay, Biachad is together. That's our B. A is accountability. Okay, S is selflessness. All right, and H is hitzmasrut. Okay, it's the Hebrew phrase for devotion to a cause, and that kind of goes back to that commitment to Israel that is so important. Exactly, that I find so important. But because if you have that devotion, it's harder to give up. So Israel Lacrosse going forward, you'll see that we're going to have that bash mentality as a program. Whether it's next summer and beyond, whenever I'm involved, bash is going to be the most important thing that we do. And I just think when you can find that focus, it's easier for everybody to have an idea of what they should be doing. And it doesn't need to be, you don't need to hold their hand. You don't need to tie their shoes for them. You don't need a rule for everything. It's no, are you being a Tom or are you not? Are you living bash day by day or are you not? So when you say coaching voice, it probably started when I was able to simplify the game in certain statistical categories at Bowdoin. And then it has evolved to now being a Tom at BU or playing bash lacrosse with Israel.
Oh, I could talk lacrosse stuff all day, like defending the free play. I got that from you. It's all that good stuff. But I got one last question for you, and you let me know if we can. Can we talk about your brother?
Sure,
Because
absolutely.
he's kind of a badass.
Yeah, actually, I It's somebody was asking me the other day. What were they saying? Like, so what's your resume? And I don't know if it was my resume or like who are you? And I was like, oh, I'm Jake's brother. I'm Yaakov's brother. And that was that's kind of who I was to this person. He's like, do you always introduce yourself as Yaakov's brother? Like, that doesn't sound like the right way to start your resume off. But I was like, hey, that is what it is. So happy to talk about him.
So I had a chance to actually speak with him again during COVID. I did a talk with the guys and girls over there through Zoom, and had a chance to meet him. Hell of a lacrosse player, but pretty pretty great guy who's done a lot of great stuff. So give us a little bit about his background and who he is.
Sure, sure. As the older brother, I'm certainly proud to brag about Yaakov. He give you a little background on kind of where he is. He lives in Tel Aviv now. He's the director of youth development in Israel. So when we talk about sort of that pillar, one of the pillars of Israel lacrosse being grow the sport domestically, he is the guy. He's that guy, and he's done an incredible job. And I know he's got a heart full of commitment to all of his youth players across the country in Israel. He's always clawing tooth and nail to do what's best for them, because they're taking a chance. Everybody wants to play soccer and basketball in Israel, but his guys and girls, they'll come out and they'll give lacrosse a shot, and he wants to give them the best version of himself. And I think that's probably what I'm most proud of him in his lacrosse career, is the way that he has committed to all of the youth lacrosse players in Israel, boys and girls, because they don't usually come from Jerusalem or Tel Aviv, from the well-off areas. They come from the periphery, and they're headquartered in Ashkelon. But the Sderot group and the Shara Negev group and the Beer group and the Beersheva group, like, these are people that are living on the periphery of these areas, and it's not always an easy upbringing. So certainly, as the director of youth development, he's done incredible work and tireless amounts of time and hours to create a great experience for these youth kids playing lacrosse. But he moved to Israel in the January of 2014. He tried out for the national team, for the men's field national team, going to Denver in 2014, and he's been there ever since. Certainly, I personally think as a lacrosse player, he's gotten better since he left Hobart, and I think there's a few other people that would agree. But yeah, man, that's him. He spent to commit to Israel, to live there. He actually fell under at the time, the age of subscription service was 26, so he was under that. So he ended up spending 2.5 years in the IDF, the Israeli Defense Forces, as a paratrooper. Took a couple hops out of airplanes and did a lot of border protection and serving the country to make sure that Israel was the place that everyone knows it as, is a safe place to be and a really cool place to visit on the Mediterranean Sea, and beautiful food, and diverse people, especially in Tel Aviv and Jerusalem. Like, it's a cool place to go. So he did those 2 years while all the time holding on to his role as the captain of both the men's field team and men's box teams, and the director of youth development. The way that he moves Israel lacrosse forward just every day is super impressive. I'm super proud of that. And I think the one thing about Jake is he's got his moral compass set on the right way, and when he sees bullshit, he calls it right out, and that's something that I certainly I appreciate. So I'm excited to coach him. He'll be the captain again going into next summer, and certainly proud to share a sideline with him. And certainly grateful that he was able to make such an impression on Israel lacrosse that they wanted to bring somebody else from the family into the mix.
Yeah, no, just a great. I've heard so much about him, and then when I finally got a chance to just like talk and hang out, and he invited me over to come over, and again, my ignorance, I didn't know it was like such a beautiful beach,
Oh yeah.
ocean place. Like, I've always wanted to go, and then when I saw that, I was like, oh man, this is Yeah, I'm taking
Let's go.
that opportunity.
Let's do it. Let's do it. We'll bring you down. We'll do some lacrosse clinics, man, at the Dan Kraft lacrosse facility, our national team training facility. It's beautiful. It's the only turf field outside of the U.S. that is specifically lined for lacrosse.
Wow.
Uh, we've got a little bit of a weight room over there, right on the facility premise, and it's a cool place. It's at the Ashkelon facility, the Dan Kraft International, or excuse me, the Dan Kraft National Training Center has been an incredible upgrade for Israel lacrosse.
That
We've got
phenomenal.
a home field now, home turf, and it's great not only for the national teams but for the youth development too. They know that's okay. I'm going to the lacrosse field, and it's neat to be able to say that.
Oh, no, that's phenomenal. Like I said, I'm definitely taking up that opportunity, and like, thank you so much, man. I know the time I probably went over. We can do this all day, but truly, 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 you are an amazing friend. Like I said, a great coach, great person, and I am so honored to call you friend, my man.
Awesome, Rashad. Same. I echo that, and certainly appreciate the platform to talk about my lacrosse career and Israel lacrosse as well. It's something that not everybody gets to do, so I appreciate it.
Awesome. You're the man. Thanks, big dog.
Awesome. See you.